Welcome to another episode of Wisdom Wednesday, where we have different speakers coming onto our show to show you some of the ways that you can become self-sufficient. We want to give you the tools to overcome all your challenges that you may face. And today we're going to talk about something that can be quite painful, but it doesn't have to be. We're going to talk about relationship, love, and trauma. Today, I have a trauma expert with me today. Anita, thank you so much for coming onto our show. Please share with us what you do.
Thank you, Martha. It's just beautiful to be here with you all. You're an amazing group of women. So my background is that I've been working in the field of psychotherapy and trauma and abuse for 29 years. And before that, I just think it's relevant to know that I got into this work because I escaped from domestic violence myself with my two young children. And I went into therapy because I wanted to make sure it never happened again. And after a couple of years of therapy, I thought I want to do this because I knew I'd wanted to change careers, but I hadn't known what. And so that was what led me into this field. And prior to the domestic violence, I'd been in a childhood where there was a lot of trauma, generational trauma, ancestral trauma, as well as neglect and sexual abuse. And so it really shaped me to not be confident in my sense of self and left me very vulnerable when I was out as a young woman. So it's been a huge passion of mine to support women so that they can get through things quicker and easier than what I did, because there's a lot more that's known than what was known back when I was first trying to get help.
Oh, I hear you about it, definitely, because back into my days of, I also come from a 19 years abusive marriage myself. And back into my days that the myth and the misconception of what a toxic relationship actually looked like was not clear to me, because I'm looking at my own parents. That's how they speak to each other. That's how they've been doing with each other. I come from an Asian family. So to me, I didn't actually know or have the knowledge of like what is a toxic relationship. So if I may ask these questions, and that would give some clarity to our listeners and our audience, what is defined as a toxic relationship and how the trauma it can actually cause on a person?
Yes, it's so important, because if we don't know how to name it, we can get caught in it. Because I was the same. I thought the way my parents were wasn't loving and supportive of each other, and there was control and a whole lot of things going on. And so when I was in the abusive relationship that I was in, I thought because I wasn't being hospitalized, it wasn't abusive. And I had those, a whole lot of ideas that we'll probably talk about. But to clarify, I've created my own definition around what is an abusive relationship. And for me, it doesn't matter whether it's abusive or toxic. If you're not feeling comfortable to be yourself, then that's enough to know that it's not okay and there needs to be something changed within our own choices and understandings, and then see what happens. So, what I say in my definition is when someone is not allowing us to have our own feelings and reality, and they're wanting to control and punish us and not allow our reality, as I said, then that to me defines an abusive relationship, when there's a pattern of that. So it's important to understand when there's a pattern of that control and punishment and not allowing you to have your own reality and feelings, it's an abusive relationship. It may be that there's not a pattern of it, but those dynamics come out at times in relationships. And then I just say, not that it's not important, it's a toxic relationship. And either of them aren't good. As long as you don't feel okay, it's not good.
I hear you on it, because like a lot of us that in a relationship, we have that thinking of, oh, like we need to be acceptance, because like that's some of the myth that we've been told. We have to be like, work our ass off for our partner, because that's what a nurturing woman and a mother should be. And I find that a lot of the times that because of those misconceptions and that myth about what a healthy relationship look like, or what a relationship should look like, that keep us into that trap of thinking that, oh, I must do this because I saw my parents, I saw my friends, they all did that sort of thing. So it created my own belief of saying that, oh, yeah, it must be all right that the way that I'm treated like that, or it must be okay that because other people survive it, but not knowing what a healthy relationship actually look like.
Yes, I think a lot of the time it's not modeled adequately in our families or even our friendship groups. And when you look at the statistics, how many women are impacted by domestic violence, like they say it's 1 in 3, but I actually think it's more than that, because when I talk to women over the years, a lot of women come to me when I'm doing my talks, because I do talks about this, and they say, oh, I wasn't in an abusive relationship. And then they start listing the behaviors and they're all abusive. But in their mind, they don't see it that way, because either because he didn't hit them or because they were doing things too. And so they say it was both of us. And so I actually wrote an ebook to explain the difference between someone who's intentionally using tactics to control and punish and deny you, and responses that happen out of trauma and helplessness. It doesn't mean it's okay when we respond in a less optimal way, but if we're labeling it as we're being abusive too, and not recognizing accurately that we're in a trauma response, we're not trying to control the other person, whereas the other person might be trying to control us. There's a big difference, but if we make it all the same. And so some of the myths, it's so important to know about myths and misconceptions, otherwise we make inaccurate decisions. Some of the misconceptions I find is things like, well, when you're in a relationship, you be with the good and the bad. But being able to define, well, what is acceptable in the bucket of bad? Control, punishment, and denial should not be part of that bad. It should not be happening at all. And so one of the myths that I took into my relationship was, I thought if I was speaking assertively that the other person would respond back, because I'm not being aggressive or passive even. I'm speaking out in a fair way, and I'm not yelling, and I'm explaining, and I'm being kind and compassionate and understanding. And I thought if I did that, if I did the right thing, then the other person would do the right thing back. But they don't, because they've got a different agenda and a different perception and a different reality. So being aware of our own stories of what we think is going to happen in a relationship as well. We could talk like for ages just about the myths and misconceptions. I actually wrote a document, and I can't remember how many are, but there's probably around 40 that I wrote that if people wanted, I could email them a copy of. But I think it's important to talk about healthy relationships when we've got these misconceptions about relationships. We need to know what are we looking for, because often find women are saying to each other that you deserve better, you don't deserve this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we, as opposed to thinking about what we deserve, think about, because our head can get caught into all different stories about what's right or reasonable for what we deserve. But if you go to your feelings and go, does this feel good? Do I feel comfortable, uplifted, okay to be myself? Then you know this is good. So rather than thinking, what does a healthy relationship look like? Do I feel okay? But
mm,
again, we may have a history of experiences that are limiting us from showing ourselves. So being
mm,
able to differentiate, is it because the other person is being verbally or non-verbally controlling or threatening, so we can't be ourselves? Or is it
mm,
because we've got this residual from something else, but they're wanting us to be ourselves?
mm,
And so for me, because I hadn't seen a healthy relationship growing up,
mm,
I thought I didn't know what it looked like. It's
mm,
quite shocking when it's hard to find it in your family and friendship group. And so then I started studying and looking at what does a healthy person look like. And it's like they've got bright eyes, they've got healthy skin, their posture, because when you've got a good attitude, your body reflects it. So, if they're and if they feel like their eyes and their face and their body are all one, it's not just a hypnotic look kind of thing. So if someone's holding themselves well and they've got a bright smile and bright eyes and they make eye contact and they've got good color, good, then it's not just one thing, but it can be one of the things that can be helpful. But also, do the words match the behaviors? There's so many things, but I always encourage people to listen to their gut instinct, because when I used to do all my domestic violence talks, I used to ask the women, did you have early warning signs? Because I was curious, because I had early warning signs from the moment I first saw him. And every single woman that I've asked that question to has said yes, but we're not listening to our instinct. So, as there's, I don't know if you want me to talk about more about myths and misperceptions, but it feels like these things are very tied to it as well.
Yeah, I think so too, because what you're saying is just hitting a lot of points. I see a lot of the women in our group actually saying that these are all the signs and sign. And I'm like, okay, like there's no judgment from us coming whichever way. It is their life. They can do whatever they want. But if they're asking for help, like we really wanted to say to them with love, this is what you're saying. Have you even actually have a read of what it is? And a lot of the time that we go back into a space, and like I did a post yesterday talking about, you know what? One of the reasons why I stay in my abusive relationship, this is a blunt, very deep knowing about me, is that I was scared to be alone. I was scared that
Yes.
I'll be alone forever. I'm scared that no one else want me because of what he said to me, that I'm not lovable, I'm horrible, I'm ugly, I'm fat, I'm all those label that becomes a trauma for me, that
Mm.
I'm scared to even try. And what got me out of it was this sentence that I'm sure every single person who heard that will feel the pain that I was feeling. But that pain, I'm looking back at it, I'm actually grateful for it, because what he said to me, that one sentence, got me out of the thinking of having any hope in this person. I always find that woman doesn't leave a relationship because they still have this hope, this thinking that he will change. I can fix him because I'm such a beautiful person. I can fix him and this will change. We always have that hope. But thanks to my ex-husband telling me that one sentence, it squashed every single hope that I have in this relationship and this person. And what that sentence was I asked him why he was treating me this way. Hey, we're all guilty. A lot of us have asked that question. Why are you treating me this way? And his answer was, because you're not worth it. You're not even worth a pile of dirt. That's why you deserve this treatment. And
Mm.
I was like, what? A, B, C, D, E, F, G? You didn't even have to work for 10 years, okay? I'm the one who's paying for everything. I do everything, but you don't see me even worth as a pile of dirt. Oh my God, that really woke me up. So looking back into it, you can hear it from my voice. I don't have any anger. I see it as a gratitude, but it was a lot of learning to become where I am right now. So I would love to ask that this question. How does the trauma from a relationship can reflect on a person? Because I think a lot of us are carrying trauma from relationship, but not knowing it. But we've reflected from a lot of aspect of our life.
Yes, that's really important. And if I can just add also before I answer your question,
Mm,
what you're saying, it's interesting what you say about the one sentence, because there was one sentence my ex said to me. He had a son from a previous marriage, and he said, I got hurt one day, and his son was upset, and he said to my son, "Don't worry, I won't hurt you. I love you." And it was like light bulbs. Oh, he doesn't love me because he hurts me. So
mm,
that was my one sentence that helped. But what I wanted to say on a neuroscience level is,
mm,
with what you were talking about with the posts, that when women
mm,
share their story, is that when we're trying to think about something, if our emotions are in overwhelm, it doesn't matter how much you think or talk or understand. Emotions is what develops an action and a behavior. Emotions motivate us. That's in the same part of the brain, in the limbic brain. And emotions tell us the value of information about our experience and mobilize us into an action. So if we're in a state of confusion and overwhelm, it's hard to take action. When I
mm,
was running my course, because I don't do therapy anymore, I teach a course. When I
mm,
was running my course in 2020, it was for all women who were in abusive relationships.
mm,
And some of them were still in their relationship. And when I interviewed them to apply to do the course, some of the women were saying they'd been wanting to get out for a long time, but they hadn't been able to. They were too overwhelmed. And so they
mm,
joined my course. Now, in my course that went for 18 weeks, we didn't not once talk about abuse or red flags or safety plans or anything. All I did was teach them how to switch the brain out of the stress response, how to soothe themselves from the residual of what's happened, and how to develop and deepen generative new habits.
mm,
Within 2 weeks, some of the women were emailing me and ringing me and texting me saying, "I'm in the car with the kids, we're leaving." And some of them were messaging me that they were at their new home that they'd
mm,
found.
mm,
When your system is supported from the
mm.
feelings, then you can take the actions that you need to take. And I think that's just so important to just when you were talking, that came up.
Yeah, I think that's actually very important because this is the idea of this space that we have in our group, making sure that there is this safe space for them to actually talk about. Like I want people to know that if they're listening to this, that the only reason why we're bringing it up in here is not to just those people or shame those people that who are asking for help. It's that I see a lot of women, like what you said, they're in this state of overwhelm, even that 99% of the people who commented as a support, as a to tell her, like, this you should leave and things like that, they're not ready to do so because they are in that a trauma state that they don't know what to do next, and the body doesn't actually respond to it. So by you sharing that message, it can let a lot of us know we support you onto it, but you need to take that step to support yourself. If you need help, go and ask like for support. Talk to someone that is specialized in trauma response, like yourself, Anita here, to actually give you a different pattern of doing things. Because I think that a lot of us, when we're looking at trauma and relationship, we just want to find a solution for it. But most of the time, the solution we are looking for is, how do I fix him? How do I fix this problem? Instead of looking at, okay, what do I need to do to feel stronger so I come up with a better solution for this?
Mm, mm. And also, I think you were kind of referring to when you said that fear of being alone is a massive
Mm,
reason why a lot of women don't take action. And also
mm,
a fear of the unknown of,
mm,
you know what it's like when you're with him or her, for
mm.
same-sex relationships as
Yep.
well. Um, but you don't know what it's going to be like in getting out. and that can often lead that inner protector within ourselves to go, well, I can manage this. That feels more doable when I'm so stressed and overwhelmed to be with what I know than the unknown of not knowing where he'll be, if, where I'll go, what will happen in the unknown. So getting support so that you're not alone can make a massive difference. But I wanted to make sure that I answered your question. Can you repeat it in case if there's something I've missed?
No problem. It's more about like, how do we actually recognize the trauma we get from a toxic relationship? Like, how does that trauma affect our body? Because I think a lot of us are not knowing that we have previous trauma. But what we do in relationship is we carry that hope, carry that thing that we didn't get, but we hope the next person will actually cover it. And not knowing that, hey, you know what, we are the one who's responsible for that trauma and to get the healing. So I would love to talk about that from your point of view.
Yes. So, sometimes we have actual literal memories and flashbacks and things like that, but sometimes it's like limiting beliefs about ourselves or the other person or the world or the future, and those limiting beliefs that narrow down our possibilities and our choices. So there's often, if we've got a lot of unresolved trauma, we can have things like symptoms like a foggy head, being forgetful, becoming a pleaser, or, wanting to look after everyone else rather than ourselves, because we feel more capable and in control when we're helping someone else, and we become a rescuer for other people rather than be with the vulnerability within ourselves.
Yes.
So there's such a huge list of different symptoms and things. And if people want to share in the comments, any questions, we can always go into it deeper, because there's such a huge list. But, it can, when it's left unresolved, it can affect your memory, your digestion, your sleep. It will increase inflammation in your system, because the cortisol and the adrenal system is switched on for too long. But it doesn't mean that you can't switch it off when you've got the good resources. But you can have energy issues, fatigue issues, adrenal fatigue. A lot of disorders are connected to stress and trauma. But they are, I don't want to be depressing, because they are reversible, and the body responds quickly when we give it what the mind-body system needs. So it doesn't have to be long and complicated.
Yeah, that's actually, I think, one of the big key. A lot of people will say this as like, oh, yeah, like give yourself time and things like that. Yes, you do need time to process everything is going on. But if you got someone else to guide you, that process is a lot faster, because you know exactly what to do next. It's like I've been helping some of my clients, teaching them confidence in their relationship, and I can see they just fly, because by having that great resources of unlocking some of the blocks that you have. It's like we unlock the big one and all the other one can crumble itself. And when you think that you just fix one problem, it actually solve all the other problem, because they're all interrelated. And when we are in high emotion, when we are in like suffering this hard pain that we're going through, it is hard for us to see what is that big block that you need to unlock first. And working with a trauma therapist, working with a coach, that's what they do to help you to unlock that, so you can actually move forward into it and to make things a lot easier.
Yes, because often when we've been in a toxic or abusive relationship, we're in a pattern of pacing them, watching what's their mood. And so we're not initiating because of their moods and their behaviors. And that can leave us in a very vulnerable place, because we need to take our power back and we initiate the change, not wait for someone else or something else. So, it's so important, because there's so much that we can do for ourselves that can make a difference immediately when we have that knowledge and skills.
That is true. So before we go and actually finish this, it is one of the sentence that I actually say a lot when I was in healing and in dating. I thought for me to be able to find love again, I must go through pain because there's like, there's no easy love out there. And that turned out to be a big dozo because when I find my current partner, it was like nothing I know. I don't have a lot of relationship in my life, but a few. And meeting my current partner, that smoothness into things and that way that he responds as a healthy person, it makes a huge difference to it. So, what would you say about this sentence, this big myth? How do we break it that love must go through pain?
I agree, because we've also got a myth about, I can't remember what that sentence is, but there is a phrase, yeah, of, that you need like blood, sweat, and tears kind of thing. If it won't, good things take pain.
Time, yeah, yeah,
And even I think I often say to people that people think the therapy process should be painful and long and
yeah,
difficult because
yeah,
what they went through was difficult and painful and long. And
yeah,
it doesn't need to be that way when you understand the way the mind body system works. But
exactly.
but I think people almost don't want it sometimes to be quick and
Mm,
easy because they think that if they get over it quickly, then it mustn't have been that bad. And they were
ah,
really impacted. So that it's almost like some people want to hold on to the pain to validate what they've gone through. But, there's ways of being able to support a person so that they can be validated to the depth of what they experienced. But
mm,
yes, it can be when you know the way the mind body system works, the system can shift things quickly.
mm,
And it wants to. It's like if you think about when you learn to drive a car, from
mm,
day one, you're not talking about car accidents.
mm.
You're doing exactly what you want to be doing when you've got your license. And
Yes.
so the more you feel comfortable and confident and supported to do and think and choose what you want to be doing, then the system, the brain will keep going to that and repeating that. Just like when we drive, how it goes automatically to, we don't even have to think about it. Yeah. We can
Mm.
automatically be choosing those better feeling thoughts. So, yes, we don't need to be.
Like going through pain first before finding that love that we want.
No, because with the way the brain works is when you keep talking about the problem, the brain doesn't differentiate between the original experience and you talking about it. It lights up the same areas of the brain. So it keeps deepening those old neural pathways. And one
Mm,
of the understandings I came to is one of the reasons why we get stuck in that pain for so long is because we don't know how to soothe it without contextualizing back to it and falling back inside like that room. If you talk about it like the human
yeah.
psyche is like a house with lots of rooms, but
Mm,
you want to get out of that room. You don't want to keep talking about all of the details of inside
yes.
that room, but
Yes.
you want to be able to get out and feel okay to close the door. And
Mm,
we can do that when we take care of our beliefs and misperceptions about how quickly we can recover.
mm,
Because, when I ran my course in that time I was talking about before, it was the first time I ran it as a large group.
mm,
And I said to all of the women, you don't need to go into have therapy ever again after this. And a
mm.
lot of them didn't believe me. But at the end of it, they brought that up again and said, that's true, Anita. And so it can be easy and it can be lighter. And our system wants that because nobody wants to be with the pain. And I've had so many women come to me and say they've been in and out of therapy for decades
Yes.
and they're still carrying the pain. And
Yeah.
so we've got to look at our own beliefs about, are we are we receptive to the possibility that things can shift quicker than we can imagine? You
Yes.
don't have to, it's not about willpower of trying to convince yourself,
Mm,
yes, I can get over this fast, because that
mm,
sets up a conflict in the system of the
yeah.
part that might not believe it. and the
mm,
part that wants it.
mm,
But as long as you're curious and receptive and willing to experiment, then you're in the best ground to get to that pathway of ease and lightness and
mm,
taking care. It's not about denying or minimizing anything
mm.
that's happened. You want to be able to take care of it. But my experience is the pain happens when we're not getting what we need.
Yes.
And when we perceive that we've got to keep, we've got to be a good client and get angry or cry or, show some emotions. And then the therapist thinks, oh, yes, we're letting it out.
Mm,
But if I think about if my grandchild was on their bicycle and they fell over, I'm going to run to them. I'm not going to say, look at the scratch on your bike or look at your torn pants or look at the blood on your knee. I'm going to hug them. So, what
mm,
am I doing? I'm surrounding them with generative, loving life energy. So they're
mm,
feeling secure because they're encircled by support. Yeah.
mm,
And
mm,
then I'm going to allow them to cry or whatever it is. They're
mm.
not going to block it, but I'm going to help them to move from that into confidence and spontaneity to get back on their bike. And
Yes.
yeah, and it's when we don't do that bridge that we
Mm,
keep looping and we think there's more we've got to get let out. There's more
mm.
we've got to get let out. But it doesn't need to be that way. Our system just keeps looping back there because it doesn't have that bridge to go to
Mm.
the feeling of well-being and I'm okay and the world is okay to be in. And so when we get that support, it doesn't have to be painful anymore. It can be, we can feel excited because we can know that we can switch things very quickly.
I agree. I agree. I think that, like, I always say that, you know what, it is a 2 seconds mindset shift. If you realize that what you're doing, it is literally that spark in your brain that will actually change the differences. Anita, it's always such a joy talking to you. I really, really look forward to your upcoming workshop with us because I think that we're going to be able to learn so much from you, from dealing with like seeing trauma in a different way that doesn't need to hold on to it forever, crying it out like there's no tomorrow. There is an expression, but it doesn't have to be always like this. And I think that's what people need to realize, that to starting to change their belief on how they see trauma and how they can get recovery from it. I really look forward to our next conversation about more about it on the webinar. And if any of you are interested into our next webinar, feel free to drop it down in the comment. I will ensure to send you a personal invitation myself to ensure that you get the support you need, because what we're doing here is about giving you the advice and support so you become self-sufficient to be the best version of you. Thank you, Anita, once again for being on our show today.
Thank you, Martha. Lovely. Always a pleasure to speak with you. You're amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you to our audience and our listener to joining us on Wisdom Wednesday. I look forward to seeing you next week.